Live from London, this is BBC News. In the last few hours, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defends his plan to take over Gaza City. He says it's the best way to tackle the remaining Hamas strongholds.
Our goal is not to occupy Gaza. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists.
The UN Security Council warns the plan could endanger the lives of the remaining Israeli hostages and also worsen the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
This decision by the Israeli government will do nothing to secure the return of the hostages and risks further death and mass displacement of Palestinian civilians.
President Zelensky thanks European leaders for standing by Ukraine ahead of the summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Police say they arrested more than 500 people in London following a demonstration in support of the banned Palestine Action Group. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper stands by the decision to proscribe the group.
And I'm Courtney Bembridge, bringing you all the action from the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Clowns, comedy, music, magic, we've got it all for you coming up.
Hello, I'm Kylie Pentelow. We start this hour with developments on the war in Gaza. In New York, the UN are currently holding an emergency meeting on Gaza. It comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been defending his decision to expand his country's military operation in Gaza, which would include displacing about 1 million Palestinians living in and around Gaza City. The UK, France and other European countries warn Israel's plan risks violating international humanitarian law. Benjamin Netanyahu said the military campaign will not stop until Hamas is defeated.
The truth is that Hamas still has thousands of armed terrorists in Gaza. It vows to repeat the savagery of the October 7th massacre and to do so again and again and again. It openly professes its goal to destroy the state of Israel. It subjugates Gazans, it steals their food, it shoots them when they try to move to safe zones. And I think it's instructive that now many Gazans are fighting back. They're begging us, they're begging the world, free us, and free Gaza from Hamas.
A group of European countries have issued a warning ahead of the emergency UN Security Council meeting about Israel's plan to occupy Gaza City. Britain, France, Denmark, Greece, Slovenia all warned it would worsen already catastrophic conditions in Gaza and do nothing to secure the return of hostages.
This decision by the Israeli government will do nothing to secure the return of the hostages and risk further endangering their lives. It will also worsen the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza and risks further death and mass displacement of Palestinian civilians. The IPC has warned that famine is unfolding in Gaza. Children are dying from starvation. Hunger is so severe that desperate civilians are taking the risk of getting killed at aid distribution sites in order to feed their families. This is a man-made crisis, and therefore urgent action is needed to halt starvation and to surge aid into Gaza. We have a clear message for Israel. Lift restrictions on aid delivery to allow the UN and established humanitarian partners to operate safely and at scale, in line with the principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. It is also vital that international NGOs can operate in Gaza. Israel's unreasonable visa and registration requirements must be removed, and all land routes opened for essential supplies, including food, baby formula, medicine, fuel, and clean water. After 22 months of suffering in Gaza, now is the time for diplomacy, no more war.
With the United Kingdom's representative at the Security Council meeting says a diplomatic solution is possible, but both Israel and Hamas must step away from what he called the path of destruction.
This decision by the Israeli government will do nothing to secure the return of the hostages. Instead, it risks further endangering their lives. This escalation will only exacerbate an already catastrophic humanitarian crisis, uprooting 1 million more people and forcing them into dangerously overcrowded, unsanitary, and undersupplied areas. In Gaza, children and babies are suffering from starvation. Hundreds of civilians have been killed trying to access basic food supplies. This inhumanity cannot be justified.
Well, meanwhile, the US representative to the Security Council says the responsibility for ending the war lies with Hamas, and Israel has the right to conduct the military operation as it wishes.
Israel has accepted 3 ceasefire proposals. Hamas consistently rejected them. It is not negotiating in good faith. We know this because we are in the room. The simple truth is that this war could end today if Hamas let the hostages and all of Gaza go free. Remarkably, instead of pressuring Hamas, members of this body have encouraged and rewarded its intransigence, actively prolonging the war by spreading lies about Israel, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and the United States, and by handing propaganda victories to terrorists.
Well, our North America correspondent, Arinade Mukherjee, says the US were giving strong support for Israel.
In many ways unexpected lines, given the fact that President Trump earlier last week had said, when this entire conversation began, he said that, well, it's completely up to Israel, responding to the questions about Israel's plans for a military takeover of Gaza. So that, in a sense, set the tone of what the U.S. would be thinking. And today you have that further spelt out in greater detail by the representative who was just speaking a short while back, where she made it very clear that the blame squarely lies on Hamas. And that's what we needed to be discussing. She even stressed on how the war could be over today if they decided to, give back the hostages, but that has not happened. She also, said that it was unfortunate that the member nations who were meeting were accusing Israel of genocide, and this was counterproductive. So very strong words of support coming in for Israel from the U.S. In the face of, so far, what we've heard is condemnation and criticism from all the member nations who've been speaking so far at the UN, who have criticized the U.S.'s, the Israeli plan in Gaza. So this was the U.S. essentially making it clear that it stands with Israel, at least when it comes to this, and talking about the fact that the blame should lie on Hamas, and that in order to get peace, Hamas must completely disarm.
We are, of course, expecting to hear from Israel a little later, but can you just recap on what else we have heard so far from this debate?
Well, so far it's been going on for about an hour and a half. We've heard various speakers. It all began with that joint statement that came out, where they highlighted why they had asked for this emergency meeting, where they said that this was in need because of the plans that Israel.
We're just taking you back to the emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, and let's hear from the Palestinian ambassador to the UN.
The grave situation in Gaza and further shocking developments. Allow me also to thank ASG Yancha for his report, and also Mr. Raja Singham for his briefing. Mr. President, Israel is killing Palestine in Gaza. That is its objective. And there, over 2 million victims are enduring unbearable agony that the human mind can barely comprehend. We are not allowed to fail them any longer. We do not have the luxury to feel guilt or shame. We owe them to act now to stop this genocide. Mr. President, there is something undeniable. Israel does not care about what we say, what you say. It is obvious. The only thing that matters now is what we do. What will force Israel to change course is our ability to transform justified condemnation into just actions. And history will judge us all. We appreciate the description of almost all of you of the deepness of the pain and the tragedy that our people is enduring. While this is okay, it is not sufficient. You have to act. You have to do something about it. You have to stop it. Otherwise, this analysis and description does not mean anything if you do not do something to stop it. And you have tools available to you to do so. Mr. President, there is an international plan adopted by the International High-Level Conference in Palestine, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France, that starts with ending the use of starvation as a weapon of war and ending the war on Gaza through a ceasefire, the release of the hostages and prisoners, a massive surge of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people in coordination and leadership, in coordination with and leadership of the United Nations, and in line with humanitarian principles and the full withdrawal of Israel from Gaza. The plan further foresees the Palestinian National Authority resuming its sole governmental and security duties in the Gaza Strip with regional and international support, and Hamas handing over its weapons to the Palestinian National Authority in the context of an end to the war and in line with the objective of an independent Palestinian state. It sets forth an irreversible pathway to an independent and sovereign Palestinian state leading to shared peace and security and regional integration. Many of you referred to the results of that historic international conference about 2 weeks ago here in the General Assembly. If Israel's concerns was actually the end of Hamas rule or Hamas disarming, if its concern was actually security, it would have rallied this plan and should have been happy to see this plan adopted by almost the entire international community. Israel is seeking to cement its full military control over the Gaza Strip and is prolonging this war not to end Hamas rule or to disarm it, but to prevent independent Palestinian statehood. That is the truth. The Israeli government has said that clearly over and over again. Somebody was referring to the statement of Prime Minister Netanyahu. He doesn't want to see a Palestinian governing body overlooking the affairs over Gaza, but somebody else, not Palestinians. He said it. It's not a secret. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Israel proved long ago it was not concerned by the fate of the hostages. Look at the tens of thousands demonstrating in Tel Aviv and other cities, demanding immediate ceasefire and seriously concerned if this insanity to take place against our people in the Gaza Strip, then this is the execution or the death of the hostages, because that is the position of the families and the tens of thousands who are demonstrating in Tel Aviv. This latest decision is some more blatant demonstration of that. The Israeli government dehumanized and demonized Palestinians to such an extent that its genocide against them through mass killing and starvation, including of children, is not opposed in Israel by some, is only opposed in Israel by some brave voices. Israel proved long ago that its goal is the destruction of the Palestinian people through forced transfer and massacres to facilitate its annexation of our land. If some people believe what Prime Minister Netanyahu said yesterday and today, that there is a huge global lie, that there is no starvation in Gaza, and the two gentlemen from the leadership of the UN is also participating in spreading lies, then why don't you, the Security Council, go to the Security Council, take with you 100 journalists from your countries and other countries to verify exactly what is happening in Gaza. If he's so sure of this global conspiracy about the lie, let him prove it, invite you, allow you to go to the Gaza Strip and see exactly what is happening there. Take journalists with you so that you can verify exactly what is happening in Gaza. Because I think Mr. Netanyahu, in spite of all of the effort that he is putting with his government, he doesn't have credibility. He did not convince almost all of you and tens of countries outside this chamber from his narrative, and the narrative of his government, and the narrative of his foreign minister who came trying to manipulate a humanitarian story of a captive and the pain of that caused to that family, and he failed in trying to convince you to forget about the pain of the Palestinian people. Such illegal and immoral plans cannot be met with only outrage. That would not be sufficient. They require the mobilization of all the tools available to stop them, and we really appreciate the massive reaction from almost all countries in all corners of the globe, whether Arab and Muslim countries, or European countries, or countries that are sitting around this table, in condemning, as 5 of them stood outside this chamber in a brave way and principled way, not to please anyone, not to reward anyone, but to act on the basis of principles and conviction in condemning this plan by the Israeli government and demanding that they stop this plan, not to allow it to be implemented and to reconsider. Israel proved long ago it does not care about the Charter, international law, or the resolutions of this Council if not accompanied by consequences. These facts have led many to rightly wonder, how on earth is Israel still allowed to sit around this table and in these United Nations? If it was another country, you would have been imposing sanctions a long time ago. Mr. President, countries around the world are adopting more and more measures to end any form of complicity and to advance accountability, and we appreciate these efforts. A country like Germany to decide not to send weapons to Israel to kill our people in Gaza, just only to use one example. All states should undertake such steps immediately. Of course, it would be wonderful if you implement your resolutions, and would be excessively wonderful if you adopt additional resolutions with measures. But if these are not possible, act in your national capacity. You have tools available to you. in addition to the tools available to the Security Council, but you have tools available to you in your national capacity. Many of you are using them. I urge others to use them and to ask others to do many other things, including the recognition of the State of Palestine. All states should undertake such steps immediately, but in the face of such contempt and of 2 million lives being destroyed, of people, children killed, maimed, displaced, starved, humiliated, mutilated, buried alive, burnt alive, abducted, tortured, orphaned, bereaved, shattered, torn apart, the measures taken do not match the level of the crimes committed so as to truly deter them. Mr. President, 2 million people continue to endure pain and agony that no human or nation should ever be forced to. They matter. Every single one of them matters, and no one matters more than them. The position of Palestine is unequivocal. We reject all harm to civilians, and our civilians are not less civilians. Their lives are not less worthy. We have never justified and always rejected harming Israeli civilians, killing them or taking them hostage. But we reject any attempt to justify the massacres committed by Israel against Palestinian civilians, or its abduction of thousands of Palestinians, or its starvation policy, or its displacement policy, or its annexation policy. There is no justification whatsoever for such brutality, such impunity. We have called for a ceasefire over and over again, and we were clear that Hamas must work with the mediators to remove any obstacle to excuse that would prolong this war. We appreciate the efforts by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States in this regard. We presented plans and proposals and cooperated with every effort to facilitate an agreement to end the war on our people, while reiterating clearly that the absence of such an agreement in no way allows Israel to pursue its war of atrocities against the Palestinian people, including these plans of trying to expel 1 million people from Gaza City and to have a number of divisions of the Israeli army to control all corners of the Gaza Strip. Neither a ceasefire agreement was reached, nor the massacres stopped. The devastation of our people, the annihilation of life in Gaza continues as we speak. Therefore, given Netanyahu's insistence to pursue this genocide, to destroy our people through death and displacement, to annex our land, to destroy Palestine, and with it, any chance for peace, this Council must act under Chapter 7 to deprive Israel of the means to pursue this war of atrocities. And I appreciate that a number of you refer to that explicitly, and others refer to it by implication. To hold it accountable for its crimes, and to send an immediate international protection force to save the Palestinian people from certain death. There is no doubt that it is Israel's impunity that led to Israelis' insanity. And as the world said clearly that nothing that Israel did before the 7th of October could justify harming Israeli civilians on the 7th of October, nothing that Hamas did on the 7th of October can justify harming Palestinian civilians since. As long as Israel is above the law, it will act as an outlaw state. Mr. President, as they have for over 20 years since the Arab Peace Initiative, the region and Palestine are making the choice of peace. I said it loudly and clearly last few days ago in my statement that Ambassador Samuel referred to. In spite of the pain, in spite of the hardship, in spite of the insanity, in spite of people are not maybe thinking logically, we're not losing our minds or allowing our heart to dictate our decisions. We extend our hand in the direction of peace. We accept the declaration that was adopted by the majority of nations during that historic conference on the two-state solution. And we urge those who have not joined to send their letters to the two co-chairs, Saudi Arabia and France, declaring their commitment and abiding by the declaration of the 19 leaders of this conference, the two co-chairs and the 17 co-chairs of the round tables. Peace is much better for everyone than war. We don't need no more wars. We need to stop the killing, the occupation, devastation, hostages, prisoners. We need to respond to the call of millions of people in all corners of the globe, in all capitals, who are saying, peace now, ceasefire now, release of hostages and prisoners now, stop the starvation, send food and medicine and water up to scale to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, allow for the reconstruction of Gaza, allow for the implementation of the two-state solution by beginning with ending this illegal occupation, the independence of the State of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital, and therefore to have the two-state solution as a reality on the ground. This option is much better than the option of what Netanyahu and his government are planning to do against our people in the Gaza Strip, as if what's happening to them is not enough. They want to add more devastation, more agony, more pain. They want to erase them from the face of earth. And we will not allow them to do that, and you should not allow them to do that. We are willing to work with the US administration, Saudi Arabia, and France, and the members of this council and other regional and international partners to bring this war on our people to an end now. To end the bloodshed and the suffering now and once and for all. To achieve freedom and shared peace, security and prosperity. We have a duty to act and cannot waver. Your actions today will determine the fate of millions of people tomorrow, at least those who would have survived by then, and the fate of our region for generations to come. And I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Agradezco a la
I thank
delegación del Estado Observador de
the
Palestina.
delegation of the Observer State of Palestine for their statement.
Doy la palabra
I
a la
now give the
delegación
floor
de
to the
Israel.
delegation of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to our briefers here today. Despite some extraordinary and brazen language and statements we heard here, I will, however, attempt to address the supposed reason for the convening of this meeting. On Thursday night, Israel's Security Cabinet approved the Prime Minister's proposal to defeat the Iran-backed Hamas terrorist organization. This is the same organization responsible for the October 7th attack, currently holding 50 hostages under unimaginable conditions and remaining the sole source of suffering for the population in Gaza. The IDF is preparing to take control of Gaza City while ensuring humanitarian assistance flows to civilians outside combat zones and away from the reach of Hamas. This is not conquest. Israel has no plans or desire to permanently occupy Gaza. This is liberation from a brutal terror regime. As our briefer stated earlier, I wish to reiterate the principles, the 5 clear principles that the Israeli Security Cabinet adopted for concluding the war. 1, the disarming of Hamas. 2, the return of all our hostages, both living and deceased. 3, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. 4, Israeli security control in the Gaza Strip. 5, the establishment of a non-Israeli peaceful civil administration governed neither by Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. This is the only way to ensure a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it clear. Israel's goal is not to take over Gaza, but to free Gaza from Hamas and enable a peaceful government to rise in its place. This is the path to stability. This is the path to peace. Hamas's repeated refusal to agree to ceasefire arrangements, together with the horrific images of Eviatar David and Rom Braslavsky, exposing yet another aspect of the organization's monstrosity, make it clear that Hamas will not relinquish its control over Gaza through peaceful means. Nonetheless, despite a broad international consensus that Hamas cannot remain in power, and despite clear evidence of its refusal to give up control, parts of the international community continue to oppose Israel's efforts to act against Hamas. This position is both contradictory and difficult to reconcile with the stated goal of ending Hamas's rule. Some who criticize Israel make sure to call for the unconditional release of the hostages merely to clear their conscience. But how can one ignore the fact that Hamas is exploiting the hostages and the Gazan population to maintain its position, benefiting from attempts to pressure Israel and from the willingness of some countries to recognize a Palestinian state? As Secretary of State Rubio said, talks with Hamas fell apart on the day President Macron made the unilateral decision that he's going to recognize the Palestinian state. Those messages, largely symbolic in their minds, actually have made it harder to get peace and harder to achieve a deal with Hamas. As was mentioned before, Hamas itself has even admitted this. The pressure should not be placed on Israel, who suffered the most horrific attack against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, but on Hamas, in order to demand the immediate and unconditional release of our hostages. Yet, in a complete inversion of morality and logic, this body has urgently convened to chastise the one democracy in the Middle East, the nation standing on the front line of the battle against radical extremist terrorism. If this body truly believes in justice and morality, then let your urgency be directed where it belongs, towards dismantling Hamas, towards freeing our hostages, toward ensuring that such atrocities never happen again. Anything less is not urgency, it is hypocrisy. I thank you, Mr. President.
Agradezco la delegación de...
So that was the Israeli ambassador to the UN there, and just before he spoke we heard the thoughts of the Palestinian ambassador as well. They are speaking at this emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, which is underway in New York, and we are continuing to follow, of course, what happens there. Well, earlier we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said that it was a press conference that he held, and he said the Gaza City takeover that he's planning is the best way to end the war. Let's hear.
The truth is that Hamas still has thousands of armed terrorists in Gaza. It vows to repeat the savagery of the October 7th massacre and to do so again and again and again. It openly professes its goal to destroy the state of Israel. It subjugates Gazans, it steals their food, it shoots them when they try to move to safe zones. And I think it's instructive that now many Gazans are fighting back. They're begging us, they're begging the world, free us, and free Gaza from Hamas.
Well, let's get some analysis now from Nagar Mortazavi, political analyst at the Centre for International Policy. Thank you very much for your time here on BBC News. So let's talk about that press conference that was held earlier by Benjamin Netanyahu. It was actually as that UN debate was starting. What did you make of Netanyahu's tone?
Well, you can't be blaming, you can't basically imply that the UK is Hamas, Denmark is Hamas, international organizations are Hamas. This is not Hamas talking point. Hamas is not even present at any of these tables. Yes, Hamas are responsible for the horrific massacre that was October 7th, over 1,000, 1,500, 1,200 Israelis killed, including children, the elderly. But the IDF, the Israelis, are also responsible for 60,000 people killed in Gaza, 18,000 children. You can't just keep blaming Hamas for everything. And the famine, the issue of hunger, this is something that's been reported by credible international organizations, including Israeli human rights organizations. The issue of the ethnic cleansing or a genocide even that's been happening in Gaza is something now genocide scholars, some Israeli genocide scholars are even saying and verifying. So I don't think just pointing the finger at everyone and saying they're Hamas and that these are all lies is really something the world is going to accept anymore, especially because, people can see with their own eyes the images that have been coming out of Gaza.
We know, of course, the International Court of Justice is currently considering a case against Israel on the question of genocide. I wonder whether you consider the protests that are taking place, that we know are taking place across the world and also within Israel itself. Do you think that Netanyahu does feel that he has the support of the people to carry out this military plan?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that he even has the support of the public opinion in the West. What he does have is the support of powerful Western governments, mainly the United States. This couldn't have been done without the arms sales, without the financial support, without the political support, diplomatic support of the United States that we keep hearing in the Security Council, the vetoes, the statements, and all of that. The moment the U.S. Lifts that support, removes that support, or stops it, even pauses, I think this can't continue going on. So the public opinion, even here in the US, is not really on the side of, call it ethnic cleansing or quote unquote genocide. But policy, unfortunately, is still on the side. And I think the public opinion and policy basically has some catching up to do in the United States. Poll after poll has shown that even US public opinion is no longer supportive. There's been a major shift both in the Democratic and Republican party constituency against Israeli actions in Gaza, but US policy hasn't really caught up to that and is still kind of supporting one side of this conflict, and we've seen the humanitarian and civilian toll of that.
We've been following that UN emergency debate for the last hour or so here on BBC News. Do you think there's any chance that Netanyahu would be listening, watching that, and considering what different countries are saying about his actions?
Absolutely. I think this is as much a war of narratives as it is a war in the battlefield. And that's why the Israeli side cares so much about having an absolute control on the narrative. Over 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza, many of them now reported targeted. I don't think this is a coincidence. The fact that foreign journalists have not been entered into Gaza, it's absurd. For 2 years, the Israelis have not let any international journalists independently get into Gaza. Even aerial footage of the enclave has been so controversial just recently coming out by international outlets. And what we're seeing from Gaza is basically our eyes and ears on the ground have been Palestinian journalists, which are doing this at a great risk also to their lives. So I think it really matters what other countries are saying, especially countries who are considered allies or friends of Israel, so Western countries, Europeans, the US. And I think the Israelis are losing the narrative, this war of narrative, but at the same time, it really matters to them. And that's why we see sort of this pushing back on some of these talking points or this shift of narrative.
OK, Nagar Mortazavi, thank you very much for your thoughts. We appreciate your time here on BBC News.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn to Ukraine now. European allies have rallied behind Ukraine, insisting that any peace talks over the future of the country must include Kyiv. A joint statement was issued by the UK, France, Germany and other European allies ahead of Donald Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. Well, a White House official said that the US president is willing to include Volodymyr Zelensky, but for now it remains a summit between Mr. Trump and his Russian counterpart. Our World News correspondent Joe Inwood has this report.
It is a grim, familiar sight. Another young soldier laid to rest in Ukraine. His name was Mikhailo. As his widow looks on, his mother reflects on the country's dilemma.
Right now, we don't have the opportunity to recapture our territories. But to prevent people from dying, we could sign some kind of agreement, but not give up our territories. Not agree that we are giving the captured territories to Russia.
That feeling that the war must end, but not in a way that rewards Russia's invasion, is not just found in this capital, but right across Europe. It was reflected at a hastily arranged meeting of European and Ukrainian security officials yesterday, hosted by the British Foreign Secretary and the US Vice President, and welcomed by President Zelensky.
And all the partners share the same understanding of the need for a ceasefire, for an end to the killings. Only one actor stands against this: Putin. His only card is the ability to kill, and he is trying to sell the cessation of killings at the highest possible price.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Ever since his now infamous bust-up in the White House, Volodymyr Zelensky has gone out of his way not to criticise Donald Trump or his plans for peace. That same caution was evident in a joint statement from Keir Starmer, along with key European leaders, following yesterday's meeting, which welcomed US talks, but said, "We are convinced that only an approach that combines active diplomacy, support to Ukraine and pressure on the Russian Federation to end their illegal war can succeed. We stand ready to support this work diplomatically, as well as by upholding our substantive military and financial support to Ukraine." Their fear was, and maybe remains, that when Presidents Putin and Trump meet here in Alaska next Friday, talk of territory swaps will really be about Ukrainian concessions. Some say it is inevitable.
But the brutal reality is that if you want to get to peace in this conflict, you're going to have to accommodate some key Russian determinations. For example, Russia is never going to return Crimea to Ukrainian jurisdiction. Similarly, for the two provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk, it is very unlikely that they will do so. They have actually, one of the things they've done in the run-up to this summit is indicated a bit more flexibility on the other two contended provinces, Zaporozhye and Kherson. So the Russians have moved a little bit, get the process going, and there may be scope for more movement.
Even amidst the talk of ceasefires, the fighting continues. Russia regularly releases footage of what it says are its battlefield successes, hoping they will add to the pressure on Ukraine to make concessions. That is something they are aware of here in Kyiv, but that will not make the sacrifice any easier, even in the name of peace. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Mikhail Kasyanov served as Russian Prime Minister under Putin between 2000 and 2004. He now lives in exile after being classed as foreign agent by the Kremlin, a label used by the Russian government to curb opposition. This is his reaction to the news Mr. Trump had agreed to this meeting.
Initially, it was there was the idea that Special Envoy Witkov agreed or just listened to Putin's proposal for a ceasefire and for the conditions, some kind of exchange of territory or something like that, that people started to think that's interesting, let's see further on. And a few hours later, it appeared to be there was a wrong interpretation. It appeared to be that Mr. Putin doesn't want just to give any single concession, and he didn't give any, and he is not going to give any concessions, to make any concessions. He demanding his victory. The whole day's full-scale invasion started with the explanation by Mr. Putin that he would like to liberate Russian-speaking people on territory in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And that's what now just Lugansk already under full control of Putin. And now Putin demands so that Ukrainians would withdraw their troops from the remaining territory of Donetsk region. It means victory for the initial intention of Mr. Putin. If it happens, that will be absolute victory of Mr. Putin. That will be, he will raise his legitimacy, and Russian propaganda will describe it as absolute victory, and he will be prepared to decide together with the President of the United States the fate of the whole world. Today, of course, we all understand that Mr. Putin should be in a political isolation. And for having a meeting together with President Trump, for Mr. Putin, that's already a breakthrough. He will demonstrate for the whole world and for Russians in particular that he already just coming to victory. That will be only in his hand, playing for his hand. But for Mr. Trump, of course, it's another opportunity to try to find a way how to settle, because he's looking for a ceasefire, not necessarily for comprehensive peace agreement, because just the term of president is 4 years, but negotiations could last just much longer than 4 years. But it is clear, Mr. Putin already just calculated what Mr. Trump is about. And that's why he understands that Trump needs urgently ceasefire agreement. That's why Putin trying to bargain just some kind of territorial exchange or whatever it could be.
Now, a diplomatic row has broken out between Niger and the US over a rare meteorite found in the West African nation, which has been sold at auction for over £3 million. The meteorite travelled more than 225 million kilometres before crashing down to Earth. Well, Niger's government is questioning the legality of the export and whether it would constitute illegal international trafficking. Now, what do you do if you fancy a run during the hottest months of the Dubai summer? Well, perhaps you could enter a marathon. Well, throughout August, a number of the city's shopping centres are opening early for runners. It's in an effort to encourage exercise during the UAE's hottest month, when temperatures can reach as high as 50 degrees Celsius. The air-conditioned malls keep runners cool and would otherwise be empty at that time of day. What a good idea. Now, they're one of the world's most important seabird sanctuaries, and today the National Trust is celebrating 100 years of looking after the Farne Islands off the coast of Northumberland. Since the charity took ownership in 1925, the islands have faced serious challenges through climate change and avian flu. But now some species are showing signs of stabilising, and the Trust has announced plans for its biggest ever archaeological survey of Inner Farne, as Fiona Trott now reports.
A jewel in their crown. That's what the National Trust call these islands. They're a safe haven, a place where 200,000 seabirds come to breed. Some are endangered.
The feisty one.
Which is why rangers will even risk a puffin peck to protect them.
So we're just going to weigh it now.
The count on Inner Farne started over 70 years ago. Now in its 100th year, the charity's rangers are trying something new.
So the blue rings have got the a 3-letter code. So the idea is that we can try and recite them in the field, and then from that we could get an idea of how old they are, how far they might disperse.
There's lots of poo and feathers in the entrance.
But before then, they have to catch as many as they can.
So you're always going very carefully into the burrow because you don't know if you're going to get the bum or the beak.
Over 900 puffins perished during the avian flu outbreak, but early signs suggest their numbers are stabilising.
The birds are back, they're flying around, they're bringing around food to each other. It's looking good, so that's a relief for the 100-year mark. However, you're never safe. The puffins are endangered. There's so many problems they're facing out there and here. So as long as we're doing as much as we can here, then that's what we can do.
They've been burrowing here for years, but what else lies beneath their feet? Much is known about St Cuthbert's Chapel, but now the Trust is launching an archaeological survey with Bradford University to explore what was here centuries before.
We've got some really detailed written descriptions of what St Cuthbert constructed for himself. It's phenomenal. I mean, you don't regularly get windows into the past like that. We've all got everything crossed that something is found. But if nothing else, it's going to tell us, it's going to really reveal an awful lot about a millennia and a half of human occupation of Inner Farn.
Human history and natural history being investigated and protected for the next 100 years. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Northumberland.
Now, for 3 weeks in August, the Scottish capital, Edinburgh, becomes the world's most vibrant stage. The Fringe even is officially underway, with performances from almost 4,000 shows, more than 60 countries putting on all sorts of things, theatre, comedy, circus. Our team is right in the middle of it and is there for you now. Courtney is there for us, and I'm very excited about this guest, Courtney.
Well, I'm going to make you and the audience guess who this next guest is. I'm not going to give you any clues, but I will say that you'll probably recognise the sound of their voice. So I'm going to take the microphone off camera. Let's have a listen.
We're at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. There's about 4,000 shows on here. What I want to know is, are any of them about cheese?
So, let's reveal who has that voice. Not what you're expecting, I'm sure. This is Ben Whitehead. He, of course, does the voice of Wallace in Wallace and Gromit, but he's here under an entirely different guise as part of a musical about Elon Musk. So a different character. Are you going to give us a little taste of Elon now?
I could do Elon, but I should say it's not a musical, though, I have to say. Though I would definitely not have got the part if it was a musical, that's for sure. But Elon's a very different kind of a voice because he's got a very stiff lip here and he's quite monotone and there's a little bit of a stutter in his voice. Sometimes he goes up, but the main thing is we can't do the whole show like that. So we need the audience to stay awake. So yeah,
okay, we're gonna take.
He's a bit more heightened than that.
We're gonna take you back to Ben for the rest of the interview, so I can keep track of who I'm talking to. So tell us about this show. It is about Elon Musk, and it has kind of changed over the course throughout development as Elon Musk's role in the kind of world has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. He's certainly changed a lot of people's opinions of him over the last year or so as well. Fortunately, the canny writer there, David Morley, has preempted some things as well within the script, and potential fallings out with people he sort of saw coming, so they're in the script already. So yeah, it's a very fast-paced comedy about Elon Musk getting lost in space because of the actions of his nemesis, a certain president of the United States.
We've been saying all day that you truly can find anything at Fringe. You know, like if you want a mixture of Norse mythology plus wrestling, it's here. Yeah. And Elon Musk Lost in Space falls into that category too. Right. It's probably something you can't find in many other places around the world. How have audiences been receiving it?
Well, we had a sellout show at the Camden Fringe Festival last week, and they absolutely loved it, the audiences. So yeah, we're really happy with that. Glad we got to do it before we came up as well there, so yeah.
Fantastic. And your character, Sarah, tell me about it.
So I play Musk's AI assistant, who is meant to be sort of subservient, but actually over the course of the play there's a real pendulum swing of power as she sort of her software updates and she starts to kind of like wield some power. And I think it's quite a Freudian play. It is really funny. It's a satirical slapstick comedy, but actually there's some really interesting stuff in there about the ego and the megalomania of the man Musk, and I think Ben does a great job. I just need to mention, we're so lucky to have him because he has that unique skill set. He's hilarious, he's lovely, he has a passing resemblance to Elon Musk, but also he can do all the voices, so he's also voicing Donald Trump, Patrick Moore, Brian Cox, all of those pre-recorded. Arthur C. Clarke in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So yeah, we're very lucky.
I'm very lucky too.
You're making him blush. How do you go from playing someone like Wallace, who's completely different to this character? Like, does it take you a little while to get into...
Well, it's very different doing, recording booth work and then getting out on stage and doing it. And like I said, doing an actual impression of Elon Musk for an hour wouldn't work in this show. It needs to be really heightened. So you can imagine Elon Musk as we don't see him, when he gets really uptight and tense and, but also imagine him sort of playing a space ranger, almost like a sort of Buzz Lightyear kind of version of Elon Musk, except not quite as cool as Buzz. So yeah, you can develop the character within the character, and it makes it much more fun to do, hopefully for the audience as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you guys both so much for joining us. This is one of thousands of performances on here in Edinburgh for the month of August. There are venues inside classrooms. Someone's performing in a shipping container, in caves. What venue are you guys in? Something normal?
At the Grand Theatre, Surgeons Hall. We open tomorrow till the 23rd.
That sounds actually really nice compared to some of the venues here. But over the next day and a half, we've already been here for a day and a half. We've got more for you planned tomorrow, so do stay tuned to BBC News over the next evening and into tomorrow. And we've got plenty more acts. We're meeting as many performers as we can, trying to bring you the best of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe as we can.
Courtney, thank you so much, doing a great job for us there. Now, the last street vendor of newspapers in Paris is to be decorated by President Macron with the Order of Merit. That's one of France's highest honours. Ali Akbar, who's 72, has been selling copies of Le Monde in the neighbourhood of Saint-Germain since 1973. He's been recognised for his contribution to French culture, and very well deserved too. Do stay with us here on BBC News.